Hello everyone, welcome to all. This is Dr. Chaithanya K, working as Associate Professor in Physics at Marri Laxman Reddy Institute of Technology and Management. Today, I am going to start a new course that is the Fundamentals of Semiconductors, contents of the course. So, the following contents what we are going to discuss in this course, those are Introduction to Semiconductors and differences between the intrinsic and extrinsic semiconductors, formation of p-n junction diode, and construction and working of the p-n junction diode, and VI characteristics of the p-n junction diode and G0 diode, Hall effect, and direct and indirect bandgap semiconductors, and also construction and working of the various types of optoelectronic devices such as solar cell, pin diode, photo avalanche diode, or so on. And finally, applications of the semiconductors. Let's go for the course outcomes. Course outcomes is nothing but by the end of this course, student can able to know the importance of semiconductors in current technology, and by the end of this course, students can gain the knowledge about the various types of semiconductors and various types of diodes and various devices, and also students can gain the knowledge about the differences between the different types of semiconductors. By the end, students can get the knowledge about the complete knowledge about the semiconductors and their utilization in current technology. Okay, then go for the introduction. So we all know that semiconductor, in the sense, by the name itself, we can say that the materials which are having intermediate electronic properties, or the materials which partially allows the flow of current, we can call those materials as semiconductors. Before going to learn about much more deep in about the semiconductors, let us discuss about the some fundamentals which are the very essential to start the semiconductors. Those are, let us see here, differences between metals, semiconductors, and insulators here. So there are different methods to differentiate the conductor, semiconductor, and insulator. Based on the conductivity, we can say that the materials which completely allows the flow of current can call it as a conductor. The materials which partially allows the flow of current can be called as semiconductor. The materials which doesn't allows the flow of current can be called as insulator. However, here in this image, I am going to explain, or you can able to see that based on the energy gap, how we can able to differentiate the conductor, semiconductor, and insulator. So here in this image one, you can see that in this one, metals or conductors, we can see that the valency band and conduction bands both are overlapping. That means there won't be any gap between the valency band and the conduction band. They are overlapping together. When they are overlapping together, there is no need of much more energy to move the electron from the valency band to conduction band, so that easily electrons can move from the valency band to conduction band and leads to the flow of current in the material. Okay, so then go for the semiconductor. In the name itself, we can say that it has an intermediate, somewhat moderate gap between the valency band and conduction band. That means initially semiconductor will act like an insulator. However, by giving the little bit amount of energy, either it may be thermal energy or it may be optical energy, some whatever it may be, by giving little amount of energy, we can excite or we can move that electrons from the valency band to conduction band. So when electrons moves from the valency band to conduction band, then it leads to the flow of current. Okay, then the energy gap, generally the energy gap of the semiconductor range is 0.1 to 3 electron volts. Some of the semiconductors also be there, which is called wide band gap semiconductors, up to 3.7 electron volts, or some maybe 3.9 electron volts. We can call some of the material as a wide band gap semiconductor. That means even though they have the wide band gap, by giving the some energy, external energy, we can convert them as a good conductors. Okay, then we go for the last one, that is the insulator. So insulator means the material which doesn't allows the flow of current. Why it doesn't allows means because of the huge energy gap between the valence band to conduction band. Okay, so as much as energy band increases, it is very difficult to push the electrons from the valence band to conduction band. So that these materials, even though if you give the little bit amount or more optical energy or thermal energy, electrons are unable to move to the conduction band. Okay, so that we are not getting conductivity in the insulator. However, the fundamental knowledge of the valency band, conduction band, and what core energy band, this and all, we all know that from the basic sciences classes itself. That's why I'm not discussing about what is valence band and what is conduction band and what is core energy band. So briefly, valency band is nothing but the energy band which is related to the outermost energy levels. That means the highest occupied energy levels indicates with the valency band, and the higher most, more than that, whatever the energy levels which are empty energy levels, the empty energy levels related band is known as conduction band. So the electrons which are in outermost orbital can be called as valence electrons. These valence electrons loosely packed with the nucleus. Whatever the electrons very close to the nucleus will be called as core electrons. They are tightly bonded with the nucleus so that they won't participate any kind of conduction or something else. But the electrons which are in the outermost orbital will participate in the conduction. Okay, so even though if they are in outermost orbital, still they are having bonding with the nucleus. But by giving little amount of energy, these electrons can move from the valence band to conduction band. Conduction band is nothing but higher burst energy levels, okay, which doesn't have any relation with the nucleus, so that electron can move freely in between the positive ions, so that the electrons which are in conduction band can be known as free electrons, which leads to the flow of current in the material. So that if I want to get the flow of current in any material, that electron should be in conduction band. So this is our brief introduction about the valency band and conduction band. The gap between the valency band and conduction band is known as forbidden gap, either energy gap or forbidden gap. So if gap is more, it is unable to push the electron from the valency band to conduction band. If gap is moderate, then we will call it as a semiconductor. Then if there is no gap, then we will go for it, call it as conductor. Okay, however, we are focusing on semiconductors in this unit. So we all know that semiconductor, in the sense, as of now, I said different definitions. We can call it as a material which partially allows the flow of current. Also, we can call it, we can say that based on energy gap. As I said, if the material which has the moderate energy gap can be called as semiconductor. So there are conductors available which has a good conductivity, and there are some insulators are there. Why we should focus on semiconductors? That is very, very important. So by just knowing itself that it is a partially allowing the flow of current, or it has a moderate gap, it is not enough to meet the current technology. So that there is a need of deep and deeper learning about the semiconductors to meet the current technology. And being a technical students, we must know about much more about the semiconductors and their role in the electronic industry, okay, which meets the whatever the proper whatever the present requirements. Then we just look into the what is the importance of semiconductors. So we all know that people in this present generation need flexible electronic devices. Flexible means that device should be having some qualities, such as the device should be very small. That means it should occupy very less space, and the device should be having less cost. Okay, the cost should be less, and also that should be optimum. Suppose, let us take an example. Let us take a mobile or something. Let us take a TV which has the fixed volume and fixed brightness, and the size of the TV is like a big bench. Then is it possible to move that TV from one place to another place easily? Not right. At the same time, the cost also plays major role. So people require flexible electronic device. That means it should be portable. We can able to move the device from one place to another place. And second one is cost effective. Cost effective means, suppose we all know that iPhone 14 or 15 Pro or 16 Pro Max, everything, whatever it may, it has n number of features. Still, many people are unable to buy that iPhone because of high cost. So that many people, we are buying the generally Android phone which has the n number of features, so with the low cost. So the cost effective, at the same time size should be precise. So these are the fundamental things required for current technology. So that we must focus on the materials which meets our necessity. So among the different materials, why we are focusing on semiconductors especially means the first and most important feature of semiconductor is we can tune that material whatever we required. That means that semiconductors can act like a insulator or can act like a conductor or also can act like a semiconductor. So that this tunability, that means I have a fan in my room. That means if it is a winter season, I can maintain the fan with a speed of 2 or 3. Or if it is a summer, I can able to increase 5 or 6. Anything, even AC or air conditioner, whatever it may be, it should be optimum based on our requirement. So that this one here in the semiconductor, we can tune the or we can tolerate the current. That means if we increase, it can be act like a good conductor. If we decrease, it can also act like a insulator. That means this semiconductor can act like switch. Switch means on and off state. On and off state. That means on state means is nothing but a conductor state. Off state is nothing but insulating state. That means this semiconductor can act like any way, so that whatever the operation is required, whatever the logical operations required in any electronic device, it is possible with semiconductors only. Because whenever I want, I should able to increase. Whenever I don't want, I want to decrease that things. So either increase or decrease or whatever the operations, logical operations we should perform, that is possible with the help of semiconductors only. That's why I can call this semiconductor is a ruler of electronic world, ruler of electronic. That means whatever the device, it should be optimum to optimize. So let us think about the robotics or AI technology. Wherever you go, we should give some commands to the electronic device. Based on that commands, it should work according to the commands. So where I can give the commands, how I can give the commands, it is all about the transistor. It is all about the transistor. So transistor in the sense, it is three-terminal device, so which we are widely using in VLSI and LSI technology. So whatever the robot or whatever the high-end electronic device which is working on based on AI technology, that must be able to read our commands. So that must be follow our commands. How it is possible? With the help of semiconductors and transistors only. These transistors are made up with semiconductor which can able to do the multiple logical operations. If I want to increase the temperature, if I want to increase the brightness, I just give a command that if so and so on outer brightness is like that, you should increase the temperature or brightness. Or if I want to decrease the brightness, if outside the brightness is little bit, then you should you should able to optimize the material by giving the various commands. It is all possible with the transistors which are made up with semiconductors. So that whatever the current technology we are enjoying, whatever the current things we are enjoying, all those things possible with the help of semiconductors only. That's why I strongly says that there is a deep learning, a deep investigation is required on the semiconductors being a technical students. So that by getting the deep and deeper knowledge about the semiconductor, a student can able to know the importance of semiconductor in each and every sector. So recently in India also, we have started our own manufacturing semiconductor developing. Okay, that means as of now we are adopting the semiconductors, we are importing the semiconductor devices from the various countries, which leads to the increasing the cost of the electronic device. When we start ourselves make in India, then the cost of any electronic device may be rapidly decrease. So with this brief introduction, I am starting the next one. So there are two types of semiconductors fundamentally. First one is intrinsic and second one is extrinsic semiconductor. Intrinsic is nothing but pure semiconductor. Pure is nothing but naturally. Pure is nothing but naturally it is a semiconductor. That means we are not adding any impurities, or we are not manufacturing, or we are not doing anything. Naturally they have some semiconductor properties. Such semiconductors are known as intrinsic semiconductors. Then second one is extrinsic semiconductors. Extrinsic semiconductors is nothing but by adding some impurities, we can get some other type of semiconductors, which we can call it as a extrinsic semiconductor. I will let you know that what is the importance of intrinsic semiconductor, why we should go for the extrinsic semiconductors, even though we have the intrinsic semiconductors. You can see here intrinsic semiconductors. As I said, intrinsic semiconductor is nothing but it is a semiconductor which is in pure form, which is available naturally. So there are two semiconductors available. Those are silicon and germanium. Silicon and germanium are the pure or intrinsic semiconductors which are available naturally. These two semiconductors are having 4 valence electrons. So these two are having 4 valence electrons. As we can see in this diagram, each and every silicon atom, they have the 4 valence electrons. And we can clearly see here the sharing of these valence electrons with adjacent 4 silicon atoms. Either it may be germanium or silicon, each and every silicon atom and germanium atom sharing with the adjacent 4 atoms and making covalent bonds, so that they get stabilized. Okay. At 0 Kelvin, how the intrinsic semiconductor behaves. We can see here as previous image, silicon or germanium sharing with the adjacent 1, 2, 3, 4 silicon atoms. Here you can see this bonding is known as covalent bond. This is covalent bond. Okay, so that initially, because of the strong covalent bonds, at 0 Kelvin, the semiconductors will act like a perfect insulator. At 0 Kelvin, you can see the energy level diagram. So that whatever the electrons are having, all those electrons are occupying in the valency band itself. There won't be any kind of electron in the conduction band. You can see that empty conduction band. That means electrons are not participating in any action, still they are bonding with the nucleus, or they are having high stability by sharing with the adjacent atoms. So that initially at 0 Kelvin's temperature, pure semiconductor will act like a perfect insulator. Then what happened if I increase the temperature? If I increase the temperature up to room temperature, that is 300 Kelvin, then we can see that the electrons can jump from the valency band to conduction band. How it is possible? By giving the little bit amount of thermal energy, we can break the covalent bonds, because the covalent bonds are made up with the electrons which are sharing with outermost orbital. They don't have much more attraction force with the nucleus, so that when we give the little bit amount of energy, they're already ready to move. When we give little bit amount of energy, they will, number of covalent bonds will be break up. Those electrons will jump from the valency band to conduction band. So that at room temperature, at a particular temperature, the number of electrons presented in conduction band almost equal to the number of holes presented in valency band. Then we can see here clearly the Fermi energy level exactly lies between the valency band and conduction band. So that then what is the need to go for extrinsic semiconductors? Here I will explain. That means the number of electrons is equal to the number of holes. That means whatever I am giving the energy and whatever the output is there, almost are same. Then it is not suitable for proper electronic device. Any electronic device or anything, we should give little input and we should be able to get the maximum output. So that in order to utilize the semiconductors in a proper way, I am going for next type of semiconductors. Those are extrinsic semiconductors. So by adding the small amount of impurities to the intrinsic semiconductor, we can able to create, or we can able to develop extrinsic semiconductors. So doping in the sense, little amount, not much more, 20% or much more that. So by adding this small amount of impurities to the intrinsic semiconductors, we can develop the extrinsic semiconductors. So there are two extrinsic semiconductors. One is p-type semiconductor, another one is n-type semiconductor. Let us start with n-type semiconductors. So by adding the pentavalent elements, so pentavalent is nothing but the material which has the 5 valence electrons. The material which has the 5 valence electrons, either phosphorus or either arsenic. So these materials are having the 5 valence electrons in this orbital, outermost orbital. So when we add this pentavalent element to the pure semiconductor or intrinsic semiconductor, what happened? These 4 make the 4 covalent bonds with the adjacent silicon or germanium. 1 electron, whatever there in the valency band, becomes ideal. That means it doesn't have any electron with the neighbor atom. They become free. That means it will act like a extra electron. So what happened if we add such kind of pentavalent element to a intrinsic semiconductor? We will see in the next diagram. See here clearly, this is the phosphorus material which has the 5 valence electrons. So here you can see that 1 bonding, bonding 2 and bonding 3 and bonding 4. We can see here this will become the free electron, as I said. So as per our definition, free electron means that electron can move freely in the material, which causes to the conductivity. So in addition to the definition, what we are doing here means we are increasing the free electrons, or we are increasing the charge carriers in the material by doping the different types of impurities. Initially, in intrinsic semiconductors, even though if I increase the temperature, number of holes is equal to number of electrons. But whereas in the case of n-type semiconductor or p-type semiconductor, I can able to increase any type of the charge carriers. Either I can able to increase electrons or either I can able to increase the holes. So before that, you may understand by seeing this image very clearly. So if I add any pentavalent element to the pure semiconductor, either silicon or germanium, the pentavalent in the sense 5 electrons. So they are making the covalent bonds with the adjacent neither 4 atoms and 1 electron becomes free. This electron is known as free electron. Then how the energy bands will be appear, we will see. See here in this image, we can see this clearly. Whatever the electron, excess electron, okay, these electrons all accommodated in a special energy level, that is donor energy level. Donor means excess. I have something more than requirement, then I am ready to donate something. So like that, when I add the pentavalent element to a intrinsic semiconductor, any intrinsic semiconductor, it has only 4 valence electrons. That means to get this, to get this stability, it needs just only 4 electrons. Okay, 1 electron I am giving additionally. These electrons are accommodated in a special energy level called donor energy level. So that this energy level is known as donor energy level. Okay, at room temperature, even though it is an n-type semiconductor, even though in the presence of free electrons, still it will act like an insulator. Sorry, not room temperature, at 0 kelvins. At 0 kelvins, it will act like an insulator. Okay, that means the electrons are not in the conduction band, still they are just below the conduction band. Suppose if I increase little bit energy, what happens? See here, at the room temperature or 300 kelvins, how the electrons are simply jumping from the donor energy level to conduction band. Donor energy level to conduction band. That means by giving the little energy itself, the electrons which are in donor energy level simply jumps to the conduction band and leads to the flow of current in the material. So no need of much more energy required to get the flow of current in the n-type materials. After that, even though if I increase little bit more energy, either it may be thermal or some other. Okay, here I am explaining with the reference to the thermal energy. If I increase a little bit more thermal energy, then what happened? These electrons what are there in the valency band will jump to the conduction band. Here now you can see this here clearly, the number of electrons in conduction band is greater than the number of holes in valency band. Very clear, because whatever the electrons are here in this donor energy level first jump to the conduction band. There won't be any loss in the valency band because those are extra. Whatever the extra electrons are there, those will come to the donor energy level to the conduction band, so that by increasing the little bit more temperature, we can clearly see that the number of electrons presented in conduction band is always greater than the number of holes presented in the valency band. Hence, we can say that majority charge carriers in n-type semiconductors is electrons. Minority charge carriers in n-type semiconductor is holes. Let us go for another semiconductor, that is p-type semiconductor. So here we can see that adding of trivalent element. Earlier for n-type semiconductor I have taken pentavalent, that means which have 5 valence electrons, but now I am taking trivalent. So we know that each and every intrinsic semiconductor has the 4 valence electrons. It needs 4 valence electrons to get the stability. Okay, if I add the trivalent such as boron, okay, or aluminum or gallium or indium, okay, this material has only 3 valence electrons. That means when I add this 3 valent element to a pure intrinsic pure semiconductor, what happened? Okay, so 3 will make the 3 different covalent bonds with the adjacent silicon or germanium. 1 will become vacant. That means it doesn't have any electron to share with the adjacent atom. Okay, so this vacant is known as vacancy or hole. Vacancy or hole. Okay, so that what happened? If I create vacancies, what happened? Earlier I have created excess electrons in the material, but now what I am doing in the case of p-type semiconductor, I am creating vacancies in the material. Okay, whatever it may be, either it may be a vacancy or it may be excess electron, both are reasons for the flow of current in the material. The definition for the current is flow of charge carriers. The charge carrier in the sense, it may be electron or it may be hole. Electron carries the negative charge and hole carries the positive charge. Whatever it may be, my ultimate aim is to increase the charge carriers in the material. To increase the charge carrier material. See here in the diagram, we can clearly see, able to understand that I have added a trivalent element, that is a boron, to a pure semiconductor silicon. Okay, we can see clearly bonding 1 and 2 and 3. For the 4th bonding, it doesn't have any electron. So, lack of electron. Lack of electron. So, because of lack of electron, there we can create a vacancy here. This is nothing but hole. This is nothing but hole. Okay, now what happened at room temperature and what happened at 0 Kelvin, we will see once again. So at 0 kelvins, okay, all these excess, whatever the vacancies created, these also form a new energy level, or they will be accommodated in a separate energy level called acceptor energy level. That means they want some electrons. Earlier, they have excess electrons, so that they are ready to leave from the nucleus. They don't want to stay in here because they are already, whatever the electrons or whatever the atoms are, they are engaged with the requirement number of electrons, so that they are in excess. So that whenever we give little amount of energy, they will jump from the donor energy level to conduction band, which leads to the flow of current. But here you can see here separate energy level which is close to the valency band. The presence of the donor energy level is very close to the conduction band. That means by just giving a little amount of energy, these electrons will jump to the conduction band. But whereas in the case of P-type semiconductor, we can see that the number of these vacancies accommodated in the separate energy level, that is called acceptor energy level. So, acceptor energy level. So that this energy level is just lies above the valency band. If I increase the little amount of temperature, or else what happened? Okay, so at 0 Kelvin, even it is a N-type semiconductor, or it is a P-type semiconductor, or it is a pure intrinsic semiconductor, all three semiconductors act like insulators. By giving little amount of energy, in the case of intrinsic, they will jump from the valency band to conduction band. Number of electrons in conduction band is equal to the number of holes in valency band. Whereas in the case of N-type semiconductor, the number of electrons in valency band, conduction band is always greater than the number of holes in valency band because of the excess electrons, whatever they are accommodated in the donor energy level. Then in the P-type semiconductor, if I increase the temperature, what happens? See here clearly, if I give little bit amount of energy, these electrons, whatever they are in the valency band, simply jumps to the acceptor energy level, because in front of my door, there is a vacancy. Earlier, I have excess, that excess persons or excess electrons is ready to leave from the my space. That means they are just waiting outside the door. But now these people are, vacancies are just in front of my room. When I give little amount of energy, these electrons simply jumps to the valency band to acceptor energy level. That means they are ready to accept. So that these electrons will jump to the acceptor energy level. Even though some vacancies created in the valency band, the number of electrons in conduction band is 0. Number of electrons in conduction band is 0. After that, even little bit more, if I increase the temperature, then electrons moves from the acceptor energy level to conduction band. Okay, so that we can clearly see that the number of electrons in conduction band always less than the number of holes in valency band. That means here in the valency band, more vacancies have been created because of the trivalent element. So now if we increase the temperature, the electrons which are there in the valency band initially jumps into the acceptor energy level. Then only after gaining the much more energy, then it will move to the acceptor energy level to conduction energy level. Hence, the majority charge carriers in P-type semiconductors is holes and minority charge carriers are electrons. So that this is the brief introduction about the different types of semiconductors. What are they? Intrinsic semiconductor and extrinsic semiconductor. Intrinsic semiconductor in the sense pure semiconductor, and extrinsic semiconductors are impure, which we can able to do by adding the different types of impurities. By adding the pentavalent, we can get the N-type semiconductors, and by adding the trivalent impurities, we can get the P-type semiconductors. With this, I am concluding today's class. Thank you.